Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Jack Show. I'm your host, Jack Solomon, and today we're going to be going over the weekend recap from this weekend. Also, going to be talking about some awards and top 10s for both college and NFL. So, as always, please leave a like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. And they mean so much to me, as always. So if you could please do that, that'd be great. And without further ado, I'm just going to get straight into it. We start with the, I don't want to say game of the week. Well, I guess it was kind of, in a way, game of the week. Indiana travels to Oregon, to Eugene, to take on the Ducks. So, the final score of the game was Indiana 30, Oregon 20. Let's go through the scoring breakdown. So, started off with an Indiana field goal. Malik Benson, deep touchdown reception from Dante Moore. Roman Hembry answered with a rushing touchdown. Field goal. So, the halftime score was 13-10 in favor of Indiana. Oregon, like I said before, came out of the half and made a field goal. So it's 13-13. Roman Hembry rushing touchdown. And the fourth quarter came a pick six for Oregon. And then Indiana had a touchdown and then followed by a field goal. So the final score was 30-20. Mendoza played well. But the biggest thing that when I look at this game, I think, yeah, okay, that's gotta be the biggest takeaway. It was the defense that really played well. They forced 2 interceptions. They won the turnover battle. They were physical up front. They were able to run for 2 touchdowns. Fernando Mendoza still had himself a great game. The defense for Oregon played great, and it's one of the top defenses in college football, in my opinion. But Oregon really struggled on third down, and that's props to Indiana. Although they did convert quite a bit on fourth down, they really struggled. I would say they struggled running it. Throwing the ball, it was just trouble for Dante Moore. And I said this on Friday's show where do I believe in Dante Moore? I don't know if I believe in him. And this game definitely showed me that there's still some kinks, but Oregon, to my surprise, still really good. I think if this was last year's Oregon team and the offense was like Oregon's offense last year, that they would have won this game. But Indiana, they played a great game up front. They played physical, and basically they showed us why what they did versus Illinois wasn't a fluke. They had the 2 touchdowns. They had 6 sacks as a team. I mean, that's dominant. And none of them came from Michael Kamara. Michael Kamara had no sacks. Aiden Fisher kind of had led the team in sacks. And Oregon only had 1 sack. So Indiana, they were physical up front. I wouldn't say they dominated the line of scrimmage, but they were more physical than they showed that they were able to be more physical up front, able to run for more yards. And I look at the Oregon ground game up front, they didn't run for much yards. 2.7 yards was the average per carry. They had 30 carries for 81 yards. They had no rushing touchdowns in this game. You take away the pick 6 from Fernando Mendoza, and this is a what? This is a 7 game? Because you take away 6, you take away 13 points, it's 30-7. This game, the Oregon defense played well, yes, but Indiana's what really stood out. And that's kind of where, I mean, they did a heck of a job. Incredible. And then we got another Big Ten matchup. I watched this game. I will admit, when I said Ohio State, they're the number one by default, I meant that, like, obviously I didn't watch much Buckeyes football, but they weren't dominating like Ohio State does. Ohio State dominates the Big Ten competition. It was a slugfest at Washington. I feel like they played really well versus Minnesota last week, but Minnesota is not really supposed to be a competing team. Struggled versus Ohio, so there were some things that, okay, Ohio State, they need to fix. They played really well defensively. Matter of fact, you look at the score of this game, right? We go through the scoring breakdown. Field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Ohio State leads 20-0. Coming out of Oregon, Illinois would get a field goal, so it'd be 20-3. First touchdown allowed since the Texas game, or excuse me, since the Grambling game. Illinois scores a touchdown on a run from 1 yard away, so it's 20-16. Ohio State. Touchdown. Colin Dixon receiving touchdown that time. The defense was dominant, right? I look at the box score for this game, and I ask, how dominant was this defense? 4 sacks. They gave up, in reality, 1 touchdown. The other one was kind of a garbage time touchdown. I mean, there was no chance. It was a really good first half shutout by Ohio State. I mean, they didn't give up many points to Illinois, or there were limited opportunities. The QBR for Altmaier is pretty low, 30 for 44. Illinois could not run the ball to save their life. I mean, Lottery averaged 6.3 yards per carry on 50 yards, 8 carries, and a touchdown, which is great. But overall in the day, you average 1.7 average, only 47 rushing yards, and obviously you have the touchdown. That's great job, and it's just like Indiana where they dominate up front and they play really good defense. And so when you play like that, you show me that, yes, that's the number one team in the country. I thought, I couldn't believe when people were talking about, oh, well, you know, they're the Ohio State's best team in the country. They've proved it. They've played like it. Ohio State beat Texas, and Texas doesn't look that good. Illinois looked like a team where they were getting things going offensively. The offensive line played well, and they could not score against Ohio State. That's kind of the main thing. My biggest takeaway from the Ohio State-Illinois game. The defense dominated, and Illinois could not score points. They are the number one team in the country. I've said it previously, but this week I actually mean it. Number one team in the country. And then Seahawks, Jags, in what is a really close game. I don't really know why I have this game up here because there are a ton more games. You guys know I do. I recapped 2 games from both the college and the NFL. And I don't know why I chose this one. I could choose because there were many good games. You had Panthers, Cowboys, you had Giants, Eagles, Patriots, Saints was a good game. I know many people won't believe that. Chargers, Dolphins was the game that I really watched on Sunday, but there were good games out there. Arguably Bengals, Packers, but chose the one with the team. One team was 3-2, the other one was 4-1, and so 2 teams that I look at that are really good defenses. It's really about who would come out on top. I did not make a prediction for this game, surprisingly. I mean, I just didn't. I look at, because there were many good games. This just was a good defensive battle. In Seattle, we talked about them last week being game of the year. This week could have been game of the year. I don't know. Maybe last week, maybe this week. So, Brian Thomas Jr., touchdown reception for Trevor Lawrence, but he missed the extra point, so it's 6. Field goal from Seattle, then a bomb from Sam Darnold. I actually did not see the Jackson Smith and Jigba touchdown. I think it was a bomb. 10-6, and then another field goal for Seattle at the end of the half, making it 13-6. And then a Cooper Kupp touchdown reception. Tim Patrick touchdown reception. Final score, Seahawks 20, Jaguars 12. Jaguars defense has played well all year. You give up the 2 touchdowns to Sam Darnold, the field goals, right? And JSN, people are talking about the 2021 wide receiver room. Emeka Buka, Marvin Harrison, I think Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Did I say JSN already? I don't think I did. Yeah, JSN was in there. And that was just a great room. There was so much depth there. But, LSU is still wide receiver U. I don't care what anybody says. Although, I don't think that there's any real... Well, no, you got Nick Anderson. So, I'd give LSU still wide receiver U. I have high hopes for Cardinal Tate. Obviously, people are talking about Jeremiah Smith, but Cardinal Tate is an underrated wide receiver. He had a great couple of catches these last couple of weeks for Ohio State. So, looks like Ohio State might have the better wide receiver class this season. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith might not be eligible for the draft, but this year it looks like Ohio State might be better than LSU and what LSU has, especially with their offensive struggles. But we'll talk about that more when I get to the rankings for college football tomorrow. In this game, Brian Thomas versus Jackson Smith and Jigba was a little LSU versus OSU head-to-head in the wide receiver department. And I look at the box, again, I'm looking at these box scores, analyzing the game, because I look at this box, right? First of all, Trevor Lawrence, I mean, you don't play winning football by being sacked 7 times. So the Jaguars offensive line, they've got to get that through. But there was no real ground game for either side. It was a defensive battle. I mean, you look at the Jaguars, they obviously threw it 40 times, yet there were no turnovers like that. There were no turnovers like that for real. No interceptions, no fumbles. I mean, it was clean football. Well, I mean, there was one fumble for Parker Washington, but it went out of bounds. But it was clean football from both sides, and this was a game that I would have watched 100%. I just didn't. I was watching my Chargers had to lock in on Los Angeles. Last couple of weeks I haven't watched, and they haven't played well. But I'll talk about the Chargers more when we get to the power rankings. But Jacksonville defensively, they're really good, but the Seattle defense really dominated, especially a week after you give up 38 points to the MVP frontrunner right now in Baker Mayfield. Giving up 38 points to him is not great, but I feel like when you play as well offensively like Seattle did, where they didn't make many mistakes and they just played their game, that's kind of why they won this game. It was a defensive slugfest. Each defense stopped the ground game, so it really came down to who would be able to pass the ball the best. And it was Seattle. They played much better. Now, this is a game where we're going to have a stop and have a discussion. Because what happened Sunday night, I feel like a lot of people are talking about this, was crazy. It was a crazy game, but let me just recap the scoring. It was a Detroit field goal to start off, followed by a touchdown from Kansas City. Missed extra point. Jameson Williams caught a touchdown for Detroit. 10-6. Mahomes runs a touchdown. Then Hollywood Brown receives a touchdown from Patrick Mahomes. Sam Laporta, incredible catch to the back of the end zone. 17-20. Hollywood Brown, another touchdown reception. I mean, he's wide open, and then Butker knocks in a field goal, 30-17. Is the final score. So, I'm a Michigan guy, watch Michigan sports. So, I'm not sure if anybody knows, but the Tigers play in the ALDS Game 5 on Friday night. It's taken a while for me to kind of get through this and talk about this, but basically, right? Every team in Michigan decided to have a terrible game offensively out of respect for the Tiger season. And it worked. Because Lions struggled offensively. Michigan struggled offensively. State played terrible, although I don't really associate State with Michigan, but they are here. They are State. Only team that really won this week, I think, the only team that won from Michigan was Western. Think about it. Western is the only team to win from Michigan this week. But I was watching the game, and there were so many calls that weren't calls. I mean, just look at the penalties. Just look at the penalties. So, Kansas City, this was a game where, obviously the Lions aren't going to go 15-2 again. Two teams that were really good last year, and Kansas City didn't bounce back game. So, you could just feel that there was going to be something, going on with this game. And there was. Lions had 4 penalties, and Chiefs had none. It's not like it was outrageous, but some of the calls made by the officials were not... I mean, they were good calls. But they were just poorly timed. Like, if you're a Lions fan, the golf touchdown in the first series, if you're a Lions fan, you hate to see that. You hate to see that. They took away the touchdown. They made you kick a field goal, and that's just poorly timed. But the rules analysts explain it, and I mean, I don't get it where he's coming from. I don't understand the rule at all, but to my understanding, that was basically the Philly special. Like, it was basically the Philly special. And I'm sure the Lions, when they go over these trick plays, they look at the rule book. They make sure whatever they do is legal. And like the Dan Skipper thing, I'm sure the Lions ran that in practice for weeks. They made sure it was legal, and they did it. Hook and ladder, that was pretty early on in the game when they ran the hook and ladder. Ran it last year quite often, and they made sure it was legal. Yes, you can run a hook and ladder with an offensive lineman. Not sure if anybody remembers that from last year, but yes, you were able to do that. I feel like Detroit, they run this stuff in games. Obviously, they've been practicing this stuff for weeks. It was not a new concept that came up the week of, but I'm sure they've practiced, and they've made sure that these plays that they're running are legal. If you're a Lions fan, I would not worry about this game. I don't see anybody else winning the division. Not even Green Bay. Green Bay's offense has really struggled these last couple of weeks, and I think if Detroit and Green Bay played again, I think Detroit would win. Kansas City definitely needed this win, though, because this kind of showed you Kansas City's offense. Like, I feel like whenever the teams play the Lions, if you're going to beat the Lions, you're going to go for it a lot on fourth down, and you're going to stop the opposing team from running the ball. Kansas City was not great at running the ball, yet they got over 100 yards rushing. Right? And they were able to go for it on fourth down and have success. Detroit did not convert a fourth down this game. And they only went for it twice, which, I mean, I find that hard to believe. But, yeah, that's true. Kansas City was 4 of 10 on third down. But you're playing Detroit, and if they were in your situation, they'd go for it on fourth down. So we have to have that mentality and be aggressive and convert when it's fourth down and 1 on our own 46. That's kind of the energy that Kansas City gives during this game, right? And then the other thing I look at when I look at this, here's the other thing I look at. There's a lot of taunting. I mean, there were some things that shouldn't have been called, but there was a lot of taunting. and making fun of. Like the Lions, the Amon-Ra St. Brown celebration whenever he gets a first down. I don't know what it's called, but he does a little celebration. And the Chiefs were mocking him all night. And I'm sure we're all aware of the Brian Branch altercation and the fight with, between the two, between him and Juju Smith-Schuster and what happened. I watched Brian Branch's perspective. He said that Smith-Schuster had shoved him in the back. Replay supports that. No call. He felt like it was right in front of the ref. It should have been called. And he regrets swinging on the defender. And the Lions are going to miss him because he's going to be suspended versus Tampa Bay. He's appealing the suspension, a suspension that he won't win because he swung first. But I understand where he's coming from. I wouldn't want to shake your hand if you shoved me in the back either, right in front of the official nonetheless. And, we know what that is. It's not right. And I can't think of many other plays where Kansas City should have gotten a flag, but I'm not going to cry about the refs. The game was played. This is why we play the game. Kansas City, they played much better than Detroit did on offense. That's why they won the game. That's why they won. They just played much better on offense. Okay, now it's time to hand out some awards. And last thing about the Chiefs-Lions game. Kansas City's defense, I feel like, was always the best part of this team. Their offense just needed to get right. They got right versus Detroit. Now you play the Raiders. Raiders' defense isn't that great. Seems like you can find a way to win. That's just me. But yeah, that's just what I think. Okay, now it's time to hand out awards. For the college game of the week, I had to give it to Indiana versus Oregon. It was a top 10 game. And I doubt many people expected the outcome, but it was still a good game. Defensive game, and I did discriminate a little bit. I did say earlier, like, hey, if without this, then that would happen. Which, I'm not wrong. I don't feel like I'm inaccurate in any way, but, I don't feel like I'm inaccurate in any way, but they did have those points, and Oregon did put up a fight defensively. Offensively, they kind of struggled, but they did put up a fight, and you can't be mad at them for it. So, NFL game of the week. I've talked about this game before, but I haven't really talked about it. Like, Panthers-Cowboys. That was a great game. Game-winning field goal for Carolina. It was a great game. Honorable mention goes to a game I talked about earlier with the Seahawks and the Jags, and the Bears and the Commanders. That also came down to a game-winning field goal. Comeback of the week for college. I have to give it to Georgia. They scored 20 unanswered points on the road versus Auburn. It is Auburn, but Auburn, they've played to a significant level. They played really well, and they've been challenging competition for many teams this season. It's just they can't find ways to win now. And, there were some controversial calls in the game Saturday night. I can't explain the timeout thing. I believe what everybody says. And the opinion of the timeout thing with Kirby Smart, I believe that, yes, maybe he did gaslight the officials. But, yeah, he definitely gaslighted the officials. But what I see is... Yeah, there's no way to explain that. He totally gaslighted the officials. And then the Jackson Arnold thing, that was a touchdown. But you wouldn't have won the game anyways off of that. Although the stop did give momentum to Georgia. So, maybe it did. Commanders, I give them comeback of the week. I checked the score before I went to bed. and it was 13-0 Chicago. And the Commanders came back from that deficit. Second half comeback was incredible. And the Bears had to muster together a drive to basically win that game. So it was a great game. They were able to come back, but they just weren't able to win it. It was close, though. It was close. Upset of the week. Oh, the college. I mean, this was pretty easy. As a matter of fact, I had them as the honorable mention. And the other one is the upset. But I'm going to switch it around. Iowa State loses to Colorado. Colorado had 1 foot in the grave. This is momentum shit. This is basically UCLA beating Penn State. You beat a ranked team, granted not a top 10 team, but a decent team. This is your moment where you shine. Caden Salter and all those guys at Iowa State, I mean, they've fallen off a cliff, but they've had injuries, and they're just not right, in my opinion. So Iowa State, they've got to get things right. They've got to correct things, but I kind of had a feeling because they made the Big 12 championship game last year, and just it's really hard to repeat in the Big 12 because it's always chaos. To say it's like the SEC just wouldn't be right because it's not. But any team can beat any team. Like in the SEC, you have teams that have asserted their dominance. You had Bama and Georgia. With Oklahoma and Texas leaving that conference, order has just gone into chaos. There's no order in that conference. And teams that usually were at the top, like Oklahoma and Texas, and were in control, because they left, there's no control over this conference. Everybody is just doing their own thing. And the honorable mention goes to Texas beating Oklahoma in Red River. Mateer played, but he didn't look healthy. This is kind of the Oklahoma of old. That's what this reminded me of. Where you have a healthy defense. Not so healthy. Where the defense is really good. They play well. They put everything on the field. But the offense can't score points. This was exactly what it was last year. And we talked about Oklahoma. This year would be different. Red River, it was the same thing. Although John Mateer was coming back from injury, but if he was going to look like that, you should have not played him. But he did, and the Texas defense got a break because they dominated Oklahoma. And then the NFL upset of the week. I mean, divisional games are always tough to win unless you're the Steelers, in which case that's right there. But upset of the week goes to Jackson Dart and the Eagles. Eagles caught slipping these last 2 weeks. I've made it very public and I've made it known to other people that Eagles defense for the first couple of weeks of the season was doing its thing. It was really good. I mean, you look at the Tampa Bay game, the Dallas game, any game of the first 4 weeks, Kansas City. I'm drawing a blank right now. Just said it. Tampa Bay. There's another one. Their other game against the Rams. They played great defense, but the offense is the issue. We're always talking about AJ Brown in headlines as if he's not. It's like he's having issues. They're not getting Saquon the ball. They're really struggling, and I mean, this is not how you play winning football. And when you don't get things going offensively, you lose. So the OC, he's got to get things figured out. It was an in-house guy, so certain things that were working for them last year, he could re-implement into the offense this year. But Eagles' offense looks really bad, and the Giants took advantage of that where they didn't really have to do much defensively. You could see it. Miscommunication between Hurts and his receivers, and just not great. Not great. And Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo. I will say this about Jackson Dart. People say, it's Cam Scatterbo, CTE. Cam Scatterbo is built for that. Where he's built to kind of hit hard and run through players. Like Ray Lewis, basically. Ray Lewis was built for that. Jackson Dart is not. He's not as physically gifted, which is why almost every game we see Jackson Dart in the medical tent. Please, 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 for the sake of all Giants fans on earth, I know we love Dart and Scatterbo. They're going to run through a brick wall. Slide. It's not worth it to a certain point where you're going to risk your career for a narrative. It's not worth it. Please slide. Okay, and then college blowout of the week. There weren't many blowouts, which honestly was surprising, but UCLA taking advantage of Michigan State's pretty bad defense. I haven't talked much State, but their defense is terrible this season. And then offensively, they really do struggle offensively. Michigan State offensive line much better than it was last year, but that is an understatement because their offensive line last year was not very good. So, there were some struggles there, and then UCLA. What happened with UCLA last week? Obviously, the big win over Penn State, but also the big win, big upset. Big win this week, basically. They play good. And once again, the defense played surprisingly well. And then NFL blowout of the week. Steelers-Browns. Like I said, there weren't many blowouts in either the college or the NFL. This was maybe the most lopsided game that I could find. I really expected Chargers-Dolphins to be a blowout, but Chargers defense is bad, and they're harassed by injuries on the offensive side of the ball, so it makes sense why that was not as big as a blowout as maybe I thought. College player of the week. I'm going to give it to Mason Heinschel. I hope I said that right. From Pitt, 21 for 29. 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 16 carries on the ground for 64 yards. There's a freshman quarterback that goes into Tallahassee and into one of the craziest environments in college football and upsets Florida State. I knew I made the right decision taking Florida State out because the last 3 weeks, their defense has not played up to expectations. Where the first week of the season when they played Alabama, their defense was dominating, but Alabama figures things out offensively. Florida State has gotten worse on the defensive side of the ball. 46 to Virginia. 30 to Miami in the first couple minutes of that game. Then you get blown out by a freshman quarterback in Pitt at home. What is going on, Florida State? And then NFL Player of the Week. Give it to Sam Darnold. 16 for 27. Close to 300 yards. Instead, he had 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not going to talk much about the ground game, but Darnold played a good game. I would really kind of put him in second, third place for the MVP award this year. Not much else. Not many other players have played well. Baker, Darnold, Daniel Jones. Those are the 3 best I have, in my opinion, in the league. Dak. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention Dak. I can't believe that. Yeah, Dak's getting a lot of talk, too. Puka Nacua looking really good, but those are the... Sam Darnold's in that top 2. He's played well, and I'm one of the guys that said Sam Darnold can't do it again, and he's proven me wrong. He's doing it again. And it might have been the O'Connell system. It might have been the Shanahan system, but he's played well. He's played really well. And then the last thing to discuss is college football and power rankings. Obviously, I'm going to go more in depth on these rankings, but for this week, in college football, the top 10 look a little something like this. Georgia at 10, A&M at 9, Texas Tech at 8. What am I doing? Oh my God. That was last week's, that was the wrong week. Okay. LSU at 10, Georgia at 9, Oregon at 8, Texas Tech at 7, Texas A&M at 6, Alabama at 5, Indiana at 4, Ole Miss at 3, Miami at 2, and Ohio State at 1. And then for the NFL power rankings, 10 is Green Bay, 9 is Jacksonville, 8 is Buffalo, 7 is Seattle, 6 is Philadelphia, 5 is Los Angeles, the Rams, 4 is the Steelers, 3 is the Lions, 2 is the Colts, 1 is the Buccaneers. I'll be going more in depth on these power rankings tomorrow and Thursday. Thank you so much for listening to The Jackson Show. I know today might have been a lengthy episode for some. Please like and subscribe. And, I'll see you next time.